What is going on, everyone? Welcome to week 2 of the PTL. This week we are going up against ZayneGoose, coach of the St. Louis CardiNulls, like type null, N-U-L-L, CardiNulls. It is coached by ZayneGoose, so I played ZayneGoose once before. It isn't uploaded on this channel because it was sort of like a meme throw sort of game. It was the last week of the BBR, which I never got to finish uploading on this channel. And it was a game where he was already out of playoffs and I was already locked for playoffs, so we sort of just like didn't really care and just fucking, it was not a game that was like either of our skills whatsoever. Anyway, so this is gonna be our first like real game against each other, is what I'm trying to say. And in all truthfulness, Zayne is one of the scariest people I think on my schedule. I think he's one of the best battlers in the league, and he's shown it in a ton of other leagues that he's capable of going 11-1, 10-2. He's very, very, very strong as a player, and I'm very nervous to play him overall. And his team is fucking borked, so I'm going to show the matchup right here. It is on my right. From your perspective, it's on my left, but if I do this, okay, yes, okay, if I do this, you can see it. Wow. Okay, so you can see there's colors, which is different from what I did last time. So the way I'm color coding the things is if it's green, it's something that I'm like 99% sure will show up. Like I'm positive it'll show up. If it doesn't show up, like I'm so confident it'll show up that if it doesn't show up, I'm more confident I will win, because the mons just have such good matchup. Now, usually I'll only highlight like one or two of these probably, but in this case, I think there's 3 mons that he has that absolutely threaten my draft to a huge extent, and that is Darmanitan Galar, which just I don't have great switch-ins to, Primarina, which I have even worse switch-ins to miraculously, and Ditto, which actually can transform into a lot of my mons and beat back my team, which is pretty scary, which I can sort of go into there. The yellow are ones that I'm pretty sure will come. Like if I had to pick 3 more to add on to the 3 that I just chose, it would be those 3. The sort of orangish brown is sort of what I am pretty sure won't come, but if it does come, it would replace one of the yellow ones, so it's sort of like the 3rd level one that I think they're gonna bring. And then the gray are ones that I'm like very certain are not coming, slash I would feel good if they showed up on the team screen, because I'm that confident in those mons being such a bad matchup naturally that I have to do minimal prep for them, in the sense that they just don't match up against any of my team very well at all. So I just, you know, it seems pretty easy that I can go without putting as much prep emphasis on them, because my mons can sort of just naturally beat them, if that makes sense. So yeah, Darmanitan's huge. My only ice switch-ins are Cinderace and Durant and Barbaracle. Cinderace and Durant are frail as fuck, and Barbaracle isn't a great mon, so Icicle Crash is doing a ton. In fact, Icicle Crash is 2-hit KOing I think everything, no matter what I do, unless I do like a defensive Durant or a defensive Cinderace, whatever. And on top of that, Earthquake plus Flare Blitz beats all 3 of those mons that I just listed. So I'm very much expecting a Scarf set with Icicle Crash, Flare Blitz, Earthquake, and U-Turn. Primarina could be a lot of things. I offensively think Specs has a great matchup against me, but Gothitelle is somewhat of a threat if I bring an AV set, which you'll see that I do. If he predicts that AV set, I could see something like Perish Song coming, which would be scary. That's what my opponent last week did with Lapras, but that generally would actually be kind of nice for me, because I think Primarina being Specs hurts me a ton because my Fairy switch-ins aren't great. So that would be pretty nice. And then Ditto, like I said, checks back a lot of my teams. I don't have a lot of answers to Mimikyu if I set up myself, like a Ditto copied as Mimikyu. On top of that, I don't have a ton of answers to... It's also just good because it prevents Komodo from going for Klinger or Soul Blaze. Just a lot of things. So even Cinderace, I don't have great switch-ins to from my own perspective. So you're going to see what I end up bringing. The other stuff, I just sort of like, you know, Claydol is his only hazard setter, I believe, so I think it should come, even though I don't think it has a great matchup. Dooblade's an amazing answer to Braviary, so I think that it could come as a defensive check. And then a Lowland Persian, I think, has a chance to come based on the fact that, at least a greater chance than the others, just purely based on the fact that it beats Mimikyu back really, really well with foul play. Silvally Dragon, I think, is useless. Driftblim, I think, has okay matchup, but I think just like other rounds are just better. Toxtricity, I think actually has a decent matchup, minus Kamo having soundproof, so if that deters him right away, there you go. And then Virizion, I have no clue what set he would bring on Virizion. If he does bring Virizion, I'm confident that a lot of my mons like Cinderace and Durant and outspeed it. So as you'll see, the build that we are bringing here, I'm going to do this similar thing, and for the first time, because I didn't do this last week, I put question marks next to the ones that I don't want to reveal the items for. So I know this is sort of lame, but I won't do this very often. I'm just doing it in this case because I truly think that Zayne is someone who I can see in playoffs. Like, I'm certain I will see him in playoffs. It's hard for me to imagine that him not being in playoffs in this league, so I don't want to reveal too much that wasn't revealed in the game itself. What I will reveal, and some of this was shown in the game, some of it wasn't, is that I'm running a Shuka Cinderace. I was going to bring a Scarf set to guarantee to outpace Scarf Darmanitan. However, my friend Jacob, as always, sent me a really, really cool Cinderace set that took basically one Darmanitan hit and guaranteed KO'd back. It's a much more defensive spread with some speed and very little attack investment. But the Shuka Berry is sort of a sort of bait lead. On top of that, all I really need is Gunk Shot to hit the Primarina, U-turn for pivoting, and then the fourth move is up in the air. I ended up going with Protect for a couple reasons. One is to stall out Ditto turns and just sort of see what Ditto locks itself into. And in the same vein, that works very, very well with Darmanitan to see what move it's locked into, because since it has Guerrilla Tactics, regardless of what it is, it'll be locked into something. So even if it's like not Scarf, but it's still Guerrilla Tactics, it's still guaranteed locking into something. So just having the Protect to see what it's locked into is pretty crucial. Like if it locks itself in Earthquake, I could maybe go into my Kamo, which is a little bit more defensive this week. If it locks itself into Earthquake, I know I can take it with a Shuka as well. If it locks itself into Icicle Crash, I know I can stay in with Cindercase. If it goes for Flare Blitz, I can go in, I could just be based on whatever. Kamo, I'm not going to say too much. It is sort of just a mixed set that's more specially invested than physically invested. Things like Clinger, Soul, and Flamethrower are things that I carry. It's also my rocker this week since I don't have Hippowdon. I'm not bringing Clinger, Soul this week because it was hard for me to find 3 moves that I felt comfortable to have on a sweeper set. And then I sort of also just didn't think that Clinger, Soul Blaze, or Clinger's Soul, I should say, had a great matchup. There wasn't a lot that I could risk 33% on. There wasn't a lot I can waste 33% on and still safely set up on. So it ended up being more of a supportive role this week. Raichu as well, his only good electric switch into a Volt switch is Claydol, which, I can handle pretty well with things like Surf. So that's just Raichu. And then Durant, I thought had a pretty good matchup this week, so I ended up bringing it. I am bringing Hustle with Iron Head and Stomping Tantrum for the Doublade, and then First Impression. So general just offense matchup. He doesn't have a ton of good steel resists, if I remember correctly. So just a stab Iron Head with the Metal Coat does a ton of damage. Mimikyu is basically dual stab Sword Stance. I think the exact same set as last week, except the Spooky Plate instead of the Fairy Plate this time around, because his Ghost Switch-ins aren't great, and it also allows me to 2-hit KO Claydol after Rocks. And then the last set is a max HP, max BDF AV Gothitelle with 4 moves, with 4 attacking moves, obviously, because it's AV. This is my best switch into Primarina, period. It allows me sort of just to take a hit and fire off Thunderbolts back, and then I have general coverage moves for the rest of everything else. So let's get into the game. Okay, so we are here against ZayneGoose. Scary fucking matchup, but let's take a look at the team that he ended up bringing. I sort of want to make these longer and in-depth, so if you prefer this longer style that I've probably sort of made this video as opposed to last video, which ended up being around 10 minutes, which is shorter than most of my other videos, let me know. But this one I'm going to try and make a little bit longer and a little bit more in-depth when it comes to analyzing the game in itself, because this was actually a very good game, and regardless of the result, is something that I think is a really good example game in terms of showing what a good draft league game looks like. So he ends up bringing everything I expect minus the Driftblim. He ended up forgoing a Lowland Persian, which actually was really annoying because I did a lot of speed creeping for that thing, and did a lot of Persian speed creeping my team, and it was all for nothing. But he ended up going Driftblim instead, which honestly I was totally fine with Raichu, and I think Clangorous, whatever. There's too many Clangorous moves. The dragon special attacking one from Kamo does a lot to Driftblim, and then I have Ghost Stab with Mimikyu. I have coverage with Thunderbolt on Gothitelle. Iron Head obliterates it. Like I'm really comfortable with Driftblim, even though it came and even though I didn't put too much emphasis on it in prep. But the three big threats did come: Primarina, Ditto, and Darmanitan. And assuming he didn't shift his team around, maybe he did, but it seems to be the first three things he put on his build in the first place. So very scary. Doublade is another thing that I found pretty scary. I was very questioning not bringing Hippowdon, the decision not to bring Hippowdon rather, because it was sort of my only defensive check to Gallade, but I also sort of felt that Doublade, between Magna Rise and Iron Defense and things like that, had ways to counteract against Hippowdon in the first place. So I feel like having like special attacks like Flamethrower on Komodo and Shadow Ball on Gothitelle was a good way to resolve that. So let's get into the game. I ended up leading who did I end up leading? I ended up leading Komodo, purely just because I didn't think he was going to lead anything super scary. Worst case scenario, he led Primarina and I could just go right into my Gothitelle. He ends up leading, as you can see, what he's going to lead up here, Doublade. So I feel very confident in this matchup. I don't think he's going to stay in and go for anything. If it does, it'll do a very small amount of damage because I'm pretty HP invested. And I'm also not going to fire off a Flamethrower right away. I think I'm just going to immediately get up my rocks and put on some pressure. So it'll force Claydol to come in, force Claydol to Rapid Spin, which will be great. And he goes right into Primarina. So I feel very comfortable just going into Gothitelle, taking the Moonblast, and that is very nice. Unfortunately, it gets the special attack drop there, but that damage confirms to not be specs, and it actually confirms that it doesn't have a lot of special attack investment generally. So yeah, it was good. I was a little bit worried about Perish Song at this point, but there was no reason for me to switch out necessarily. I just figured I would go for Thunderbolt and get damage, and I ended up getting a Paralysis, and then he gets fully paralyzed. So we get in this sort of situation that I'm just going to ramble on for, where I'm just sort of Thunderbolting this Primarina down, and it keeps getting fully paralyzed. Now, if he was Shed Shell, he would have switched out by now. So I think at this point he would have, one, it's already revealed leftovers. So, but also, he's not Shed Shell. So I figure he's staying in, and since he's not Shed Shell, he could have something like Calm Mind. He could have something like Perish Song. We don't really know, but once he breaks through this paralysis, we'll end up finding out. And as you can see, once he breaks through this paralysis, he it just goes for an attacking move. So he clearly has nothing to hit my Gothitelle with in terms of any sort of special attack that can alleviate the effects of Shadow Tag, which will sort of just allow me to trade Goth and Primarina 1-for-1, which I am absolutely fine with. Gothitelle's only job was to handle this Primarina, and as you can see, the rest of my team, I don't have great defensive bonds. Like, a lot of my bonds are very frail that I have left outside of Komodo, which doesn't want to take a Moonblast anyway, and Gothitelle. So I'm perfectly, absolutely fine with, letting Gothitelle and Primarina trade with each other. So we will be able to trade these two mons for each other. Obviously, Gothitelle isn't going to go down right now. I could have stayed in and Shadow Balled, but I ultimately decided that he might want to Rapid Spin here, so I decided to Spin Block with Mimikyu, which I don't want to brag, but this is the first time I feel like I've ever Spun Blocked anything in my life. I just I'm so bad at the hazard game, but I was like, oh yeah, I fucking Spin Blocked correctly. So I'm able to go for Shadow Ball here, and since the rocks are up, it is a guaranteed 2-shot, but he goes for the Reflect, which is kind of crazy. Now here I make a misplay. I want to talk about this misplay. my thought is like, oh, I can just Swords Dance and then break through the Reflect, when in reality I could have just Shadow Clawed twice. What this is going to allow, he can't switch out. Like, it does force him to stack the Clay Doll, but it doesn't really matter, because me going to +2 like this is now going to invite in Ditto to disguise as me, and I do not have great answers. I don't have a single Ghost Resist on my Bring, so it does force me to sack off the Gothitelle here, and as he goes for a Shadow Claw. Now, this puts me in a very scary position. This is why this is such a misplay, in that now I have to hit an Iron Head. An Iron Head does take this out, thankfully, but now I have to hit an Iron Head. Otherwise, Shadow Claw does 2-hit KO me here. So, thankfully, he is scared out by the Iron Head and goes right into the Dew Blade. I am forced to Iron Head. I'm not going to make any bizarre predictions, and it's really just going to do 7 damage, which is absolutely nothing. Thankfully, since I have the Flamethrower, I can safely go into my Kamo, as he does go for the Iron Defense. He doesn't know anything about my set yet, so I can reveal the Flamethrower here to end up beating the Gallade. He goes for a Sacred Sword, sorry, and just Shadow Sneak to chip on my Kamo, but ultimately, it doesn't really matter, because I'm able to just Flamethrower this and knock it out, which is absolutely perfect. It's going to clear up some space for Mimikyu to go in offensively, because that was his sort of best thing that took a Shadow Claw, and it's also going to open the door for Durant to have a good shot. So he ends up going to Driftblim, and I'm thinking to myself, what does this thing want to do? I'm so confused. I've already revealed I'm special, so it's not going to be like defensively walling me with Flare Boost. And he doesn't really get any good flying type moves outside of acrobatics, but I saw an item at team preview, and he would have to like lose an item first, so I have no reason not to switch out. I could have probably gone into Raichu in hindsight and just safely gone for a Volt Switch instead of staying in with Komodo, but I was really just unsure what this Driplim wanted to do. Didn't want to chance it or anything, so I just went for the Clinging Scales. It does 54%, and he gets his Unburden boost with the Citrus Berry, and I'm just confident that I could take whatever hit and fire back with a Clinging Scales. But he has the Strength Sap, which allows him to heal. I had no clue that Drifloon got fucking Strength Sap in this gen now, so now we're sort of just in this war where he keeps Strength Sapping, and I keep going for Clinging Scales, and eventually he's going to knock me out with, not the Acrobatics, but Hex, rather. He gets a critical hit, but I actually don't think this crit matters, given it's a 130 base power Ghost move, and I'm burned, so that's fine. I spent a lot of time contemplating what I would go into here. I think like literal minutes. Like I think I spent like 5 minutes doing a math problem. I think I still have it here. Yeah, so like I was doing math to see to calculate the amount of health Strength Sap was gaining back from my attack stat. Like I was using the attacks, my own attacks, because Strength Sap heals the amount of HP as your attack stat. So I was like, okay, if it recovered 43% from my attack when I have like a piece of paper right here. When it gained 43% when I was 0.67 attack, what does that mean its HP is? So I do this all the time, just figuring out, all right, can I kill it with a Shadow Sneak? And I look at it, I'm like, okay, I think this looks like max HP, and it looks like max HP with no Spadaf investment, and it looks like max HP with no fucking special attack investment based on, well, it could have been, but I don't know based on the crit. So I sort of just have to assume it's max HP, max defense, and if that's the case, then Shadow Sneak doesn't kill from Mimikyu. And when I realized that, I'm like, oh shit, who do I go into? Oh wait, Raichu takes a hit and can just kill with Volt Switch. I sort of just realized that all the work I just did was for absolutely nothing, because regardless, Raichu was the play no matter what. So I end up just totally just being really dumb. But I end up going into Raichu over time, make the right play in the end, even though it took me a while to figure out, and I do end up killing this Drifblim with the Volt Switch. So this puts me in a position where I have a choice in how I want to do this endgame. I'll move my thing out of the way. I was debating whether or not to go into Durant or Cinderace here. Now, Cinderace has the Sugar Berry, and Durant has the Metal Coat, but that doesn't really matter. I was scared of what would happen if Ditto transformed. My original thought was going to Durant. The hardest hitting move that he has to hit Durant is, I believe, Stomping Tantrum, which I would have been able to sort of I probably would have lost the 1v1 with us just sort of back and forth going for a stomping tantrum. But then I would have been able to go into my Cinderace and then, go into my Cinderace and then kill the Durant. But then I realized regardless, that was the wrong play anyway. So I realized that since I protect on Cinderace, I can very easily just go into it. If he goes Darmanitan, I can kill back with a Pyro Ball after it hits me with an Earthquake. And if he goes into Ditto, I can protect, see what he locks himself into, and go from there. He does go into Galarian Darmanitan. He does not know I'm Sugar Berry. I end up being Sugar Berry in the end. Go for Pyro Ball and kill the Darmanitan. Now, there is no way that he can win from this point because Ditto only has 5 moves of whatever it locks itself into, and I get 2 guaranteed protect turns no matter what. So 1, 2, it basically takes 3 hits to kill Cinderace. Then he has 2 left, so I'm going to guarantee to have one Pokemon left in the end. It'll be struggling and stuff. So ultimately, I am able to sort of protect, then attack, then protect, then attack, which puts him at 2 Pyro Balls left. Actually, this makes him at 2 Pyro Balls left, I believe. Or no, 4. He had to use 4. So he only had 1 Pyro Ball left at this point. I just had to choose one to lose. I ended up losing Mimikyu. They were all going to die, so I just had to pick one. Sorry, Mimikyu. And then I go for a first impression and finish it off. Miss, but he has struggle, so he ends up taking himself out. So that's the game against ZayneGoose. A very, very good game. I mean, I've only played 2 Gen 8 games, but this is my favorite game of Gen 8 so far. Super talented player, and I'm sure I'm going to see him in playoffs. He's immaculate. He's a great player. He's super smart. I've seen nothing from great battles from him, and he's uploading this as well. So go check out his perspective as well. So really, really, really cool guy. I've gotten to know him over the course of both the BBR and this now. So yeah, definitely just a really cool dude. I recommend go checking him out. It was a really fun game, and that's it. Next week we play either Bredapus. I think it's Bredabus, but I don't know. I think that's who we play. We might play Trogaholic. It's one of the two, but thus continues my fucking schedule of freaking bonked skilled players, because the next like 3 people I have to play are like people who I've heard are like great battlers. So at least we'll be 2-3 by the end of it, if worst case scenario, but still very, very nerve-wracking. We'll end up seeing. But I'm very happy I was able to get 1 win off of ZayneGoose here. I was definitely not feeling very confident today, but I had a bunch of people help me out in terms of the team building process, from Slick Panther to Galadite, Nico. I'm probably forgetting some other Zombie. Just a bunch of people on my team helped me out, and then on top of that, I got help from my friend Jacob as always. So big shout outs to them. So thank you, and I will see you all later.